She walked in like she'd done it 100 times before, heels sharp against marble, white blazer catching the morning light just right. Calm, effortless, controlled. She didn't look rushed, didn't look lost. Just heads turned, but not for the right reasons. A couple of tellers gave that glance. Quick, curious, and then back to their screens. The security guard near the door shifted slightly. The kind of shift that meant watch her, just in case. She didn't flinch. She stepped up to the counter. The teller barely looked up. Young, maybe mid-20s, chewing gum slowly, eyes glued to the monitor. "Good morning," the woman said, voice low but clear. "I'd like to make a withdrawal, please." The teller blinked, finally making eye contact. Sure. How much? 35,000. There it was. The gum stopped moving. A long pause. The teller looked her up and down, not even subtle about it. Eyes trailing the white blazer, the designer bag, the gold watch. Then, suddenly, like she'd just remembered something important, her fingers froze over the keyboard.
"Yeah, we can't process that kind of amount today."
No explanation. No questions. No ID checked. Just a wall. The woman didn't move. Didn't blink. She let the silence sit there. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Then she spoke. "I'm sorry. Did you say you can't? Or you won't?" The teller shifted in her seat. It's not standard. I mean, for security. You know." Another pause. "I don't," the woman said. Still calm. Still polite. But now, something behind her eyes had shifted. Just a little. That sharp kind of stillness that says, "I know exactly what this is. Can I speak to your manager, please?" The teller hesitated, then picked up the phone. Eyes now darting to the side, like she was second-guessing everything she'd just said. A minute later, the manager appeared. Late 30s, pale blue shirt, tie too tight around the neck. He gave a strained smile, then turned to the woman. "I understand you're requesting a large withdrawal." "Yes. And do you have an account with us?" That did it. The smallest lift of her brow. A flicker of disbelief. "I do," she said. "All right, well, can I see some identification?" She handed it over without a word. State ID, debit card, business. He looked at them, then chuckled. "CEO, huh?" His tone was off. The kind of laugh that doesn't come from amusement. More like doubt dressed as politeness. He handed the cards back without even scanning the screen. "Yeah, it's just usually with that amount we need to verify a few things. You understand?" "I understand perfectly," she said. He smiled again, but her eyes stayed locked. No warmth. No smile in return. People were watching now. You could feel it. Quiet glances. A man behind her had stopped pretending to scroll his phone. A teenage girl near the exit started recording. The air in that bank didn't feel the same anymore. And she still hadn't raised her voice. The manager took his time coming over, like this was beneath him. He didn't offer a greeting. No name, no handshake, just walked up, glanced at her, then turned to the teller like she wasn't even there. "What's the issue?" The teller looked nervous now. She muttered something about the withdrawal amount and just wanted to be sure. The woman stood there, still as glass, watching. The manager finally turned to her. "So, you're trying to take out how much?" She repeated it, without hesitation. 35,000. He tilted his head like he was trying to make sense of it. "And you have an account with us?" She slid the debit card and ID across the counter. "I did." He picked them up slowly, looked at the ID, then at her, then back again. "This your business card too?" "Yes." "CEO," he read aloud, like the title had a bad taste to it. Then he chuckled. A soft scoff, more to himself than anyone else. Anyone can print a card these days. Someone behind her let out a quiet gasp. The man in the gray suit off to the right smirked, crossed his arms. Enjoying the show, the manager leaned on the counter now, like he was settling in for something. "Listen, ma'am, large cash withdrawals are flagged sometimes. That's policy. Especially without prior notice. You get it, right?" "I get that you didn't even check my account," she said. There was no bite in her tone, no fire, just fact. And that made it hit even harder. He waved a hand dismissively. "It's not personal." Then he said it. "You people always pull this." The words just hung there. The lobby didn't move. Even the printer near the back had gone silent. A teenage girl by the door lifted her phone, slow and deliberate. She was already recording. The woman didn't blink. She just looked at him, long enough to make it uncomfortable, long enough to make him look away first. "You said you people," she said quietly. "I didn't mean it like that," he said quickly, already defensive. "Don't twist my words." "I didn't twist anything." The tension cracked like glass underfoot. Every bystander felt it, knew something had shifted. The man in the suit stopped smirking. The teller looked like she wanted to disappear. But the woman, she didn't move, didn't raise her voice, didn't flinch. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, calmly opened her notes. "Could you repeat your name for me?" she asked. The manager blinked. "Why?" "So I can spell it correctly when I file the formal complaint." More phones came out, more eyes locked in, and still, she remained still. Centered. Unreadable. Not angry, not shaken, just done pretending. She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice, didn't threaten. She simply looked at the manager, expression unreadable, and said, "I'd like a receipt, please." He blinked. "Excuse me?" "A written receipt confirming that you denied me access to my funds." The words hit like a dropped pin in a church. People glanced around. The teenage girl filming shifted her phone to include the manager's face. A woman in the back whispered, "Did she say receipt?" The manager let out a nervous laugh. "Ma'am, we don't do that." "Yes, you do," she said calmly. "You print receipts for withdrawals, deposits, declined transactions. I'm simply asking for proof of service denied." He opened his mouth, closed it again. She continued, "You've refused me, after verifying my identity, without checking my account. I'd like you to document that decision." More phones lifted. Quiet clicks and record buttons. The manager shifted uncomfortably. "Look, there's really no need to escalate this." "I'm not escalating, I'm documenting." Something in her tone chilled the air. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. Precision. Like she had already moved on to the next step, and he was still playing catch-up. She placed her phone gently on the counter, screen unlocked, recording. "Your name again?" He swallowed. Tom Winston. "And you're the branch manager?" He nodded. "Good. Tom Winston, branch manager, denying me access to my own funds, with valid ID, active account, and no policy explanation." "Got it." Tom's mouth hung open slightly. He glanced around like someone might rescue him. No one did. The teenage girl filming now had her phone angled wide, catching the bystanders too. There was murmuring. Someone said, "She's got him." Someone else whispered, "That's how you do it." The woman still hadn't moved from her spot, still standing tall, calm in that white blazer that somehow looked even brighter under the tension. Tom tried one last time. "Ma'am, I think we've just had a misunderstanding." "There was no misunderstanding," she said. "There was a decision. I'm simply asking for it in writing." And with that, she stepped back from the counter. Just one step. But it felt like a line being drawn. She opened her bag, pulled out a small leather-bound notebook, and jotted something down. Her pen made soft strokes against the page. Quiet, methodical. The whole lobby watched her write, and the silence that followed didn't feel like defeat. It felt like strategy, the kind that makes everyone nervous, because you don't know what's coming next. But she did. She knew exactly what came next. She didn't pace, didn't sigh, didn't check her watch. She stood still, like time belonged to her. Then she pulled out her phone, unlocked it, scrolled, and made one call. "Hi, Janice?" "Yes. It's happening again." That's all she said before pausing to listen. "No need to rush, just have them call the branch directly." "I'll wait." She hung up. No visible emotion, no urgency. Just quiet. The manager stood a few feet away pretending to answer emails on his screen, fingers stiff. He glanced at her every few seconds, like he couldn't decide whether she was dangerous or just annoying. Customers were pretending not to stare. One woman had completely stopped filling out her deposit slip. The teenager filming whispered to someone, "She just made a call. She's not playing." 2 minutes later, the branch phone rang. Tom picked it up casually, like nothing unusual was happening. "Downtown West Branch, Tom speaking." Silence. Then a voice came through, loud enough for those nearby to hear the tone shift. Tom's back straightened. "Yes, sir. She's here now." A longer pause. His eyes flicked to the woman. "She requested 35,000. Yes." Another pause. Then his face drained. "I wasn't aware of that." No, she didn't mention that she's, yes. I understand. Now his forehead was sweating. Yes, sir, right away. He hung up, didn't move for a second. Just stood there. Then he turned, walked back toward her like he'd aged 5 years in 5 minutes. Miss Carter, I wasn't aware of your relationship with the regional office. She gave a slight smile. I didn't think it was relevant. Until now. He swallowed hard. We'd be happy to assist you with your withdrawal. That's good to hear. The teller returned with a folder and a quiet apology. The woman didn't respond. She just watched the transaction process begin. Finally, still standing, still composed. Someone whispered, "Who is she?" Another voice answered, "I don't know, but that man looks like he's about to faint." 7 minutes. That's all it took. One phone call. Then the entire energy in the building flipped. She hadn't raised her voice. Hadn't threatened. She simply waited. Because she knew exactly who she was. And now, so did they. The branch phone rang again. This time louder somehow. Like it carried weight. Tom hesitated before picking up, like he already knew it wasn't going to be good. "Tom Winston speaking," he said. There was a pause. Then the speaker crackled to life. He must have hit the wrong button. Because suddenly the voice on the other end wasn't just in his ear. It filled the whole lobby. "Tom, this is Randall Pierce, Regional Director. I need you to know exactly who you're speaking to." Every conversation stopped. The hum of the printer. The tapping of keyboards. All of it. "She is Danielle Carter," the voice continued. "CEO of Ariatech, a fintech firm with $180 million in managed assets." Tom's face turned ghost white. "She is an Ivy League graduate. Harvard Business. She sits on 2 federal financial advisory boards. And she's been a client of this bank for 11 years. The air snapped. Phones rose again. The teenage girl filming slowly mouthed, "Whoa." Tom fumbled with the speaker button, trying to kill the call, but his fingers shook too much. "Now you will do whatever she asks, and you will do it with the respect she deserves," the voice finished. Click. The line went dead. Tom turned toward her, face stiff, lips tight. He tried to smile. Failed. Then tried again. "Miss Carter, I apologize. Deeply. I wasn't aware." She held up one hand. "You were aware of enough." He swallowed. "I presented ID. An account card. A business card. That was enough." He nodded quickly. Yes, of course. We're happy to fulfill your withdrawal request now. Right away." She tilted her head slightly. Calm. Composed. "I asked for a withdrawal," she said. "Not validation." He froze. Those 7 words slid across the floor like glass. Not a single person spoke. The woman at the back counter slowly closed her binder. The security guard didn't move a muscle. Tom's smile cracked completely. It fell away, replaced with something more honest. Fear. "Would you like to speak to one of our senior tellers?" he offered. "We can expedite this." She said nothing, just looked at him. He fumbled again. "We, also have a private room, if you'd be more comfortable." Still no answer. She didn't need to say anything. Her presence now filled the branch the way only power can, quiet, undeniable, and permanent. They knew her name now. But more importantly, they knew exactly what they had just done, and who they had done it to. Tom was unraveling. You could see it in the way he kept adjusting his tie. Loosening, tightening, sweating through it. He tried to reset the tone. Let's get you helped right away. Linda, over here is one of our most experienced tellers. She'll take care of you personally." Linda stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable. Her eyes darted between the woman and the phone still filming from the teenager's hand. Miss Carter didn't move. Tom tried again. "I really think this was just a miscommunication. Happens more often than it should, honestly." He gave a weak chuckle. She studied him, like she was reading a page that kept rewriting itself. "A miscommunication," she repeated. Tom nodded too quickly. "Yeah. I mean, these kinds of situations are tricky. Sometimes wires get crossed. You know?" She finally spoke, and it was quiet. Almost soft. "Would you have done this to a white man in a suit?" The room dropped 10 degrees. Even the people who'd been whispering stopped. Tom opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The question just hung there. No one moved. The teenage girl zoomed in on his face, capturing every blink, every Tom looked like he wanted to disappear. She didn't press the question again. Didn't repeat herself. She didn't need to. It was already echoing in every corner of that bank. A man near the business account window shifted uncomfortably. A woman in scrubs looked down at the floor. The silence was suffocating. Finally, Tom tried to speak again. "Ma'am, I truly didn't mean." She raised a hand. Just slightly. But it shut him down. "No more words," she said. "They don't fix anything." Linda, the teller, gently placed the withdrawal form in front of her. "If you'll just verify the amount, ma'am." Miss Carter scanned it. Nodded once. She signed. Tom stood behind Linda, wringing his hands. "Please know we take these matters seriously," he said, voice thin. "We're going to review our training, make some changes." Her eyes didn't even meet his. She took her envelope, slipped it into her bag, turned, and started walking toward the exit. No rush, no anger, just quiet, deliberate steps. Tom stared after her, mouth half open, still not breathing right. And in that moment he realized this wasn't just a bad look. This was consequence. And it was only just beginning. She pushed open the glass doors without looking back. No raised voice. No dramatic exit. Just that same calm stride. Unbothered on the surface, but the weight of what had happened trailed behind her like smoke. The teenager filming had already hit post. Her caption read, "Black CEO denied access to her own money. Watch how she handles it." Receipt requested. It took 42 seconds for the video to hit 200 views. By the time Miss Carter reached her car, it had passed 1,000, and that was only the beginning. Inside the bank, the manager was still pacing. Still sweating. Outside, the algorithm was waking up. The clip was short, 1 minute and 20 seconds. But it said everything. The raised eyebrows when she asked for a receipt. The disbelief when she stated her title. The question that shut the room down, "Would you have done this to a white man in a suit?" The internet devoured it. On Twitter, someone reposted the video with the caption, "She didn't shout. She didn't cuss. She documented. And now it's our turn." Within an hour, the hashtag Jen receipt requested started trending. People clipped the manager's face, zoomed in on his awkward smile, his stammer. Others isolated her words, overlaying them on black screens with bold white text. "I asked for a withdrawal, not validation." Retweeted. TikTok turned the moment into a movement. Stitch after stitch, people responded with their own stories being profiled, doubted, dismissed. You can see the shift in her body language. Someone narrated over the footage. "That stillness? That's not fear. That's power." Even those who didn't know who she was, wanted to know. Who was the woman in the white blazer? And why did she walk away like the whole room already knew her name? In a matter of hours, her face was everywhere. Not because she sought it, but because she represented something bigger. The moment struck a chord that was already stretched too tight. People were angry, inspired, protective. The silence of the bystanders, the weakness in the manager's apology, the way she never raised her voice, but never gave up ground. It was all there, and people were watching it over and over. This is how you carry dignity under fire. This is what quiet justice looks like. This is why we document everything. By nightfall, mainstream media had picked it up. She didn't have to go viral. Someone tweeted. The system did that for her. And somewhere, offline, away from the noise, Miss Carter sat in her living room. Phone face down, silent, because the story wasn't about going viral. It was about what came after. The next morning her name was everywhere. Not tucked into finance blogs or investor updates. Not hidden in Forbes lists or tech conference rosters. But front and center. Trending. Danielle Carter. Except this time she wasn't trending as a CEO. She was trending as a symbol. This is not just a bank story. One tweet read, "This is a mirror." Celebrities started weighing in. An Oscar-winning actress reposted the clip with 3 words. "I've been her." A Grammy-winning singer wrote, "Dignity under pressure. Respect to Miss Carter." Receipt requested. Civil rights activists reposted the story with threads of historical context, connecting her moment to decades of economic discrimination and profiling. Even Fortune 500 executives began retweeting with quiet shame. This industry has a problem. We all know it. And underneath, none. Receipt requested. Media outlets swarmed. CNN, MSNBC, BBC, and all asking for interviews. Statements. Who was she? Would she speak? Would she press charges? She stayed silent. Until noon. Then from her verified account she posted one sentence. Simple. Unshakable. This is not about me. It's about who they thought I was. Nothing more. No follow-up. No hashtags. And that was enough. The internet caught fire again. People reposted that line with photos of their own denied moments. Denied loans, apartments, interviews, justice. They paired it with graduation photos, corner office selfies, courthouse wins. It's about who they thought I was. Suddenly her name wasn't just a story. It was a statement. A line in the sand. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't explaining. She wasn't even asking. She was showing. And everyone saw it. Commentators praised her restraint. Psychologists analyzed the power of her silence. Poets quoted her. Kids in high school debated it. In corporate Slack channels, managers quietly dropped links to bias training sessions. New ones, suddenly mandatory. Banks across the country sent out internal memos with words like review protocols, customer experience, and public perception. They didn't name her, but everyone knew. The echoes had reached the walls they were never supposed to touch. And somewhere, in a quiet part of town, she went about her day like always. No press tour, no media rounds. Just a quiet certainty in the power of the truth, and the internet's memory, because when the right story lands in the right hands, it doesn't just go viral, it catches fire. By the third day, the bank was bleeding. Not money, reputation. The video had reached over 20 million views across platforms. Major news outlets were running headlines on bias in banking. The bank's official statement landed late in the afternoon. It was cold, vague, laced with legal caution. Words like isolated incident, deeply regrettable, and does not reflect our values. But people weren't buying it. Under the post, the comments flooded in. This isn't an apology. Say her name. Fix your culture, not your PR. By morning, internal emails began leaking. An anonymous employee shared screenshots with timestamps from months earlier. Flagged complaints about discriminatory treatment of clients of color. Ignored, closed without action. Another leak followed. Internal training materials that focused more on customer risk signals than respect. One slide literally highlighted unusual requests from unfamiliar profiles. It was vague, until paired with that video. Then it was damning. A whistleblower finally came forward. They didn't name names, but their statement was clear. This isn't the first time, it's just the first time someone powerful enough didn't walk away quietly. The bank tried again. Another press release. A softer tone this time. We are committed to learning from this moment. But it was too late. Every attempt to manage the crisis made it worse. And through all of it, she said nothing. No new tweets. No interviews. No quotes. Her silence wasn't absence. It was strategy. People noticed. Respected it. Because while the bank scrambled to shape a narrative, she was letting truth do the talking. Every second she stayed quiet, the story grew louder. And they couldn't control it. Her team didn't make noise. They made moves. Legal counsel sent formal requests. Transaction logs, camera footage, internal memos. They knew what to ask for. Because this wasn't just about humiliation anymore. It was about proof. What came back was worse than expected. Withdrawal delays. ID checks repeated twice for certain profiled clients. Notes on accounts marked high alert without explanation. Mostly black and brown names. An assistant analyst on her team noticed a pattern. Over 60% of flagged transactions were connected to non-white clients, despite making up less than 20% of the client base at that branch. Further digging revealed 2 internal bias complaints from staff, both filed within the last year. Neither had been followed up on. One was closed with the note staff member has since resigned. Another simply said, not enough evidence to proceed. Her legal team organized the findings into a timeline. It wasn't just negligence. It was culture, and that made it actionable. What happened to her wasn't a one-time mistake. It was part of a system. One designed to doubt, delay and dismiss, quietly enough that most people just walked away. But this time, she hadn't walked away. She had stayed, and now she had the receipts. She didn't speak publicly, but in private, her memories did. She was 23 when she applied for her first business loan. A male banker scanned her application, then asked if she'd considered applying under a partner's name. He meant a man. She left empty-handed. At 19, she walked into a downtown branch in a sharp navy suit. The teller asked if she was in the right place. At 16, a security guard followed her through a store, aisle by aisle. No words, just his presence. Enough to make her feel small. Back then she didn't speak up. Didn't have the words, or the weight. But she remembered. Every glance, every delay, every double check. Memories like little cuts. Deep enough to leave marks. Silent enough to be ignored by everyone else. Now those flashbacks played like puzzle pieces. It wasn't her imagination. It wasn't overthinking. It was real. And for the first time she had something more than memory. She had data. She had video. She had a world watching. And more than that, she had a different kind of power now. Not the kind that sits on titles or headlines, but the kind that sees a pattern, traces it, and holds it up for the world to examine. This wasn't just about her. It never was. It started as a ripple. The lawyer posted a thread about being asked for 3 forms of ID when cashing a check. A teacher shared a story about having her signature double verified every payday. An entrepreneur recalled the time a teller told her to come back with a white cosigner. Each story tagged with the same thing. Receipt requested, and the ripple turned into a wave. People weren't just retweeting the original video anymore. They were adding to it. Expanding it. The hashtag filled timelines, feeds. Stories poured in from doctors, nonprofit directors, college deans. All of them professionals. All of them black or brown. All of them dismissed, delayed, disrespected in spaces that claimed to serve them. Some posted screenshots. Some posted video. Some posted just raw memory dates. Names, what they wore, how it made them feel. And people read. They didn't scroll past. They read. Because it was undeniable now. This wasn't one woman's story. It was a pattern. A blueprint. And people were done pretending it was just about bad customer service. Graphics started circulating. Your policies are polite. Your systems are not. Don't tell us it's rare. Show us it's fixed. We're not asking for receipts anymore. We're keeping them. Within days, organizations joined in. A group of black women executives launched a digital campaign called Silent Service, highlighting institutional bias in everyday transactions. A civil rights nonprofit created a submission form for people to report banking discrimination across the country. The number of entries crashed the site in hours. And still, Ms. Carter remained quiet. No interviews. No speeches. Her silence gave room for others to speak. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about everyone who had ever walked into a room where their presence felt like a problem. Receipt requested had become more than a trend. It had become a mirror. And it wasn't just reflecting banks. It was reflecting every place that claimed to be fair while quietly deciding who belonged. And this time, people weren't backing down. This time, they had momentum. This time they had each other. The first leak was a PDF, an anonymous email. No name. No signature. Just a subject line. This is what they train us with. Attached was a training slide deck. Internal onboarding for new hires. It looked harmless on the surface. But buried in the language were red flags. Phrases like client escalation categories. Additional steps for unfamiliar profiles. Heightened verification for high-risk requests. No direct mention of race. But the examples? All names coded. All assumptions obvious. It hit social media like a match to dry grass. And then more came. Leaked emails between managers. Complaints closed with phrases like handled internally or employee no longer with company. Screenshots of flagged account notices. Most with black-sounding names. Then, finally, a voice. Not a celebrity, not a CEO, an employee. Black. Mid-level. She spoke to a journalist under the condition of anonymity. I work at one of the branches. I've seen it happen more times than I can count, she said. They always call it a misunderstanding. But we know. We know. She talked about how staff would joke in break rooms. How certain clients were whispered about before they even walked through the door. How she filed 2 internal complaints. Both were ignored. Her voice cracked once. But she didn't stop. This isn't new. The only difference is, this time someone stayed. And people watched. The article dropped at midnight. By morning it had over 1 million views. And suddenly the bank's shield started to crack. Internal Slack channels flooded with angry staff. Executives were named. District managers called out. Employees demanded town halls. Transparent audits. Leadership resignations. One employee tweeted anonymously, "We were told this was a one-off mistake. The receipts say otherwise." A former VP posted publicly, "I left that company because they buried every bias complaint I ever filed. I'm not surprised. I'm just glad the world finally sees it." The bank tried to hold the line. Another memo. Another vague promise of review. But it wasn't working anymore. Too many voices. Too many receipts. And from inside the building, the call was now coming loud and clear. "Fix it, or face it." The camera light turned red. She didn't flinch. No script in front of her. No PR handler at her side. Just her, Danielle Carter. 7 days of silence behind her. A storm of global headlines swirling around her. And now, finally, a voice to meet the moment. The anchor welcomed her politely. Thanked her for being there. She nodded once. No small talk. "Miss Carter, after everything that's happened," the anchor began, "why speak now?" She looked straight into the lens. "Because silence gave space for others to speak," she said. Every word was deliberate. Clipped. Steady. "But now," she added, "it's time to speak with intention." The anchor leaned forward. "There are calls for accountability, investigations, even lawsuits. What do you want to see happen next?" Danielle didn't blink. "We are not asking for favors," she said. "We are demanding systems that work for everyone. Not a raise in tone, not a tremble, just the truth. Unshaken." She wasn't angry. She was clear. "This was never about one employee," she said, "or one branch. It's about a pattern that exists in boardrooms, break rooms, and banking systems." A pause. Just long enough to let it sink in. "I've walked into rooms dressed for leadership and still been treated like a threat. I've been second-guessed, sidestepped, and silenced. And I am not alone." The comments flooded in real time. "She's teaching a masterclass in poise. This is how power speaks. No theatrics. Just truth." The anchor pressed. "Are you calling for specific reforms?" Danielle nodded once. "Policy, transparency, accountability. Not statements. Not sensitivity training. Systems." No mention of the manager. No name, no face. She didn't need to drag him. She had already risen above him. "Has the bank reached out to you directly?" "They have," she said. "But I'm not looking for private apologies. I'm looking for public commitments." Another clip, destined to go viral. Before the interview closed, the anchor asked one last question. "What would you say to the people who still don't see this as a serious issue?" Danielle's expression didn't change. "I'd say you can choose to look away. But we are choosing not to be invisible anymore." The screen faded to black. The interview clocked in under 7 minutes. But it was already being clipped, shared, quoted. Because she didn't just reclaim her voice. She gave others the words they'd been waiting to say. The setup was stiff. A plain backdrop. One camera. No audience. Just the man everyone now knew as Tom Winston, branch manager, face of a scandal and sudden corporate liability. He looked like he hadn't slept. Shirt buttoned too tight. Collar awkward. The video feed went live. He glanced once off camera. Probably at someone coaching him through an earpiece. Then he began. "Good afternoon," he said. Voice dry. "My name is Tom Winston, and I'd like to offer a sincere apology to Ms. Danielle Carter." Backstage, Danielle sat with her arms crossed. Watching. Her face didn't move. "I deeply regret my actions at the branch last week," Tom continued. "They were inappropriate, unprofessional, and do not reflect the values of our institution." He kept looking down at the script. Each word felt weighed, practiced, cleaned by legal. "I failed to recognize her credentials. I failed to treat her with the respect she deserves. I now understand the pain and frustration my actions caused, not only to Ms. Carter but to others who've had similar experiences." Backstage, one of the producers whispered, "At least he didn't cry." Danielle didn't answer. Because what she was watching wasn't an apology. It was damage control. A statement aimed at headlines, not healing. Tom's tone never wavered. He never stumbled. He even ended with, "I am committed to learning and doing better." But not once did he say why he acted the way he did. Not once did he name what everyone else already had. Bias. He finished, bowed his head slightly, and the feed cut. Danielle stood up, quietly, still no expression. Outside the studio, the public's response was instant. That was rehearsed to death. Who is he apologizing to? The camera. He never said what he actually did wrong. Side by side, the two clips began circulating. Danielle's interview, clear, calm, fearless. Tom's apology, awkward, mechanical, hollow. The contrast said everything. The world could feel it. The difference between performance and principle. Between being sorry and being sorry you got caught. Danielle didn't tweet. Didn't respond. She didn't need to. Because her silence wasn't silence. It was discernment. And the world was already speaking for her. The press conference wasn't flashy. No fanfare. No red carpet. Just a podium, a seal and 3 lawyers flanking Danielle Carter with silent resolve. The lead attorney stepped forward. Civil rights legend. Gray hair. Fire in his eyes. We are announcing a class action lawsuit against Greystone Bank on behalf of over 200 customers who allege discriminatory banking practices, he said. Danielle stood off to the side. Hands clasped. Not as the plaintiff, but as proof. Proof of what happens when someone with power stays in the room. When they don't let it slide. The room filled with flashes, questions, tension. This is not a one-off, the attorney said. This is systemic. Documented. And now actionable. They laid out the evidence. Flagged transactions. Disproportionate delays. Internal bias complaints. But it wasn't just about Greystone anymore. Other banks were watching. Quietly checking their logs. Scrubbing policies. Because if one institution could be sued, they all could. Federal regulators took notice. Within days, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency launched a formal review. Senators released statements. Hearings were proposed. The story had jumped from headlines to policy desks. Bank CEOs were called to Washington. One headline read, Danielle Carter didn't just expose a bank. She lit a fuse. She still hadn't spoken much. But when asked if she supported the lawsuit, she gave a simple answer. I support accountability. For everyone. The pressure mounted. Shareholders grew nervous. Stocks dipped. Suddenly, bias wasn't just a social issue. It was a liability. One law firm reported a spike in clients seeking audits for their own internal practices. Another bank issued a preemptive statement. We are reviewing our systems to ensure equity at every level. But the public wasn't interested in promises anymore. They wanted proof. And Danielle had given them the blueprint. She didn't threaten. She strategized. She didn't posture, she positioned. The lawsuit wasn't about revenge. It was about leverage. And it worked. Because now, discrimination had a price tag. And no institution wanted to foot the next bill. Greystone Bank held a town hall. It wasn't public, but it was recorded. Executives sat stiffly behind a long table. Behind them a slide, restoring trust, our path forward. The CEO cleared his throat. This is more than a public relations crisis, he said. It's a wake-up call. They announced a full overhaul of bias training programs. Not just modules but immersive, mandatory simulations. An independent auditing firm was brought in to review 10 years of customer data. Monthly equity reports would now be published company-wide. More heads turned when they announced a newly formed equity oversight board. It would report directly to the board of directors. Not HR, not marketing. And at the top of the advisory list, Danielle Carter. The room went silent when her name was read. Some of the same executives who had dismissed her now had to welcome her as a consultant. But this wasn't about optics. This was about architecture. Danielle's conditions were firm. Real authority. Unfiltered data. Zero tolerance enforcement. She didn't want a symbolic seat. She wanted a lever. And she got one. Equity, she told them in a private meeting, isn't a speech. It's structure. The policies changed quickly after that. Every branch was required to keep a customer rights display visible near entrances. Each refusal had to be documented, with a written explanation and ID of the approving manager. New whistleblower protections were added to shield employees who reported bias. The internal culture began to shift. Not because people suddenly became enlightened, but because there were rules now. And rules meant consequences. Other banks followed suit. Quietly, of course. They started calling it internal equity modernization. But the inspiration was clear. Danielle's face had become a silent emblem. Not because she demanded it, but because she designed it. In meetings, she didn't speak for applause. She asked the hard questions. Show me the data. Who gets flagged and why? What happens when a manager's bias is proven? There were no slogans. Just change. Measured. Enforced. Built to last. And when someone asked her how she felt about being on the inside now, she gave a small shrug. I didn't ask to be let in, she said. I asked for the walls to come down. And now, brick by brick, they were. There was no spotlight, no confetti, no stage. Just a quiet post on her profile. White background, black lettering, simple as truth. Introducing the Receipt Foundation. We're not just collecting receipts, we're building systems that can't ignore them. That was it. Within minutes the site was live. Within hours donations poured in. The foundation had 3 pillars, each one forged from what she'd lived through. The first, training. Real, rigorous programs for financial institutions. Not canned diversity slides or vague HR modules. This was hands-on, context-driven education led by Black professionals. Tellers, managers, executives, trained to recognize bias not as an abstract concept, but as an operational failure. The second, funding. Microgrants for Black-owned startups, entrepreneurs, and innovators who had been denied loans or shut out of traditional finance. No endless paperwork. No coded gatekeeping. Just support, trust, and access. The third, legal advocacy. A fund to cover legal costs for those fighting discrimination in banking and lending. Lawyers trained to hold institutions accountable. Clients armed with strategy and support. No one else would have to go through it alone. Within weeks, partnerships formed. Credit unions signed up for pilot programs. A handful of venture capitalists donated without even being asked. But she didn't rush for headlines. Danielle let the work speak. In an interview when asked why she didn't make herself the face of the foundation, she answered simply, "This was never about me. It's about the millions who never had a camera rolling." She spent her days meeting with policymakers, board directors, community leaders, quiet rooms, sharp minds, big move. Her humiliation had become infrastructure, and the woman in the white blazer, she had become a blueprint, not for how to go viral, but for how to build something after the storm. She never called herself an activist, never branded herself a hero. She just kept showing up with receipts, with resolve, with systems designed to outlast attention spans. That was her legacy, built not from a moment, but from what she chose to do with it. He left quietly. No farewell cake. No retirement post. Just a Friday email from HR marked confidential, and a cardboard box carried out to a waiting car. The bank didn't announce it. They didn't need to. Everyone already knew. Months had passed since the video. The noise had died down, but the consequences stayed. Clients had left. Trust had cracked. Systems had changed. And Tom Winston, the man who once smirked at a business card, was no longer part of the equation. He gave one final interview, off the record, name withheld. "I made a mistake," he said. "I didn't realize who she was." He said it twice. "I didn't realize who she was." As if that changed the impact. As if the problem was her status, not his instinct. "I regret how it unfolded," he added. "I wish I could take it back." But even in his apology, there was distance. He spoke about reputation, not harm. About embarrassment, not injustice. There was no mention of what had been exposed. No mention of the others before her, or after. The reporter asked if he had reached out to her. He shook his head. "I don't think she'd want to hear from me." And he was right. Danielle Carter never said his name again. Not in interviews, not in panels, not in boardrooms or broadcasts. She didn't need to, because the story had never been about him. He was a symptom, a flashpoint, a mirror reflecting something much larger, and she had outgrown him completely. While he faded into HR files and whispered references, she was building, designing systems, writing policy, launching change. The camera had once captured them in the same frame. Now they weren't even in the same story. She'd moved on from the man, from the branch, from the moment, because the goal had never been to destroy him. It was to dismantle the machine he served. And while he stepped away in silence, she kept stepping forward, one reform at a time. It didn't happen all at once, but it happened. Greystone's branches began changing, not just posters or policy memos, but practice. Every teller, in every location, was now required to offer a printed refusal receipt if a customer was denied a service. Simple, transparent, unavoidable. Each receipt had the employee's name, the reason for the denial, and a contact number for escalation. At first, some rolled their eyes, but the impact was immediate. Complaints dropped. Conversations changed. Because now, there was no hiding behind misunderstandings. Now there was accountability built into the transaction. Customers noticed. One woman tweeted, "Went to Greystone today. They offered a refusal receipt without me even asking. I didn't need one, but just knowing it was an option made me feel seen. Another man posted, treated better than ever at the bank today. Yes, someone lit a fire under them. Receipt requested, still doing its job. The hashtag lived on, not as outrage, but as expectation. Other banks took notice. Silently, subtly, they started updating their own systems. Refusal documentation. Transparency protocols. New training modules focused on behavioral bias. Some denied it was because of Danielle Carter. Others didn't bother pretending. One credit union proudly posted a banner, inspired by the woman in the white blazer. We're doing better. Universities brought her case into classrooms. Policymakers cited it in hearings. And still, Danielle didn't claim credit. She never made herself the face of the reform. Because she knew it wasn't about her face. It was about the next person who walked in and didn't have to prove their worth. It was about making sure the next misunderstanding came with documentation, and the fear of consequence. What began as a 7-minute humiliation became a blueprint. For dignity. For systems. For change. Greystone, the bank that once questioned her, now referenced her in employee orientation. They didn't say it loudly, but they knew. And every time a customer was treated fairly because policy now demanded it, her legacy moved quietly through the room, one receipt at a time. She returned without announcement. No cameras. No entourage. Just her. The white blazer. The quiet strength. The same branch. This time the staff noticed her the moment she stepped inside. Not with suspicion. With respect. The manager stood before she even reached the counter. Good morning, Miss Carter. How can we help you today? She smiled gently. I'd like to make a withdrawal. The teller, a young man, maybe early 20s, handled her request with focus, care, and not one flicker of hesitation. He verified the account, verified the ID, processed the amount. Would you like a receipt? He asked. She nodded once. Yes, I would. It printed in seconds. Crisp. Clean. Her name. The amount. The signature of the employee who processed it. No questions. No delay. As she turned to leave, she noticed her. A young black girl, maybe 13. Sitting on one of the lobby chairs next to her mother, eyes wide, posture straight. Like she'd just seen something she couldn't name yet, but would remember forever. Danielle paused. She walked over. The girl's mother looked up, surprised, then smiled knowingly. Danielle leaned in and held out the receipt. The girl hesitated, then took it, gently. Danielle spoke softly. Keep this. It's yours now. The girl looked confused for a moment. Then her eyes lit up. It wasn't about the paper. It was about what it meant. Danielle straightened up and gave her a small nod. One woman to another. One future to another. Then she turned and walked out. No press, no applause. Just the quiet rhythm of change, finished where it began. Only now, the rules were different. And so was the world she left behind.